Our next speaker, I met back in 2012. The first time that I met him, in fact, you all would have seen these DVDs. The back, the beauty about this particular picture on the back of this DVD is that you see Anthony, myself, Gary Turner, and Kev with very different, less receded hairlines. It's a joy to look at. I've known Kev since then. He's become someone that I respect massively, that I consider a friend, and I'm going to give no further introduction than that. Ladies and gentlemen, Kev Sheldrake.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Adam. Where's Gary? Gary still here? Yeah. All the way at the back. I've got something for you. I've got you some because you couldn't run as fast as Adam, I've got you some non-destructive placebo running beans. So probably going to take about 8 or 10. But this,
if I take too many?
More effective. More effective. Anyway, so thanks for having me come to speak. As I said, my name's Kev Sheldrake. Head Hacking was my company, along with Anthony Jacklin, who joined us in the front row to hopefully screen us. The brilliant thing about the light is that I can't really see you. So whatever expression you have as I'm giving this talk, I'm going to assume it's one of encouragement as opposed to anything else. Head Hacking was a whirlwind. For those who don't know, I mean, obviously you've seen some of the products I think are in the bags. We did a lot of things beyond the products. I mean, I met James the Amazing Randy, one of my heroes. I mean, he just literally came up to us in a pub and had a drink with us. It was wonderful. I met the guys that taught Darren Brown conjuring and cold reading. And I can count Martin Taylor, who influenced Darren Brown in the use of hypnosis, as one of my friends. He spoke here last year. I actually introduced him. I tattooed one of my friends with our company logo in Las Vegas for the purposes of making a video. I mean, if you Google tattoo under hypnosis, it might still be the top of the Google results. It used to be. It might be 2 or 3 now, because obviously, you have people copying your work eventually. But you can see it's like a 2.5-minute video. It's an hour, like compressed down. Shows off a little bit of the things we were doing in Las Vegas before, sticking him in a chair and permanently marking his arm. But yeah, it's an interesting video, hopefully. We taught magicians, we taught non-magicians, we made DVDs to teach people how to do hypnosis, mainly in the performance world. We made magic tricks, we consulted TV magicians. I can't tell you who most of those are because we're under strict non-disclosure agreements with exceedingly heavy fines. But think of people on TV doing magic, we've probably worked with them. And we ran a boutique hypnosis conference, which the DVD that Adam just showed you was one of the DVDs from. That ran for 5-6 years. That conference was about bringing together therapists and performers, and our intention was to bring academics, and occasionally we succeeded in that. Today I'm going to talk, for those that don't know the story of head hacking, what it was, how it worked, what the sort of things we did, and I'm going to talk about some of the things I learned along the way. So I'll start with the fun stuff, and we'll end up in the science. I think that's the end of my battery. We'll get some battery. I mean, I'm not a stand-up comedian, but now I've got a mic in my hand, I'm going to feel like I am one. So if I do make silly jokes, then you have to excuse me. So yeah, I'll start with the fun stuff, and I'll work through the business stuff, and then I'll end up with the science. So if at some point in this you're thinking, I thought this was supposed to be a scientific room with scientific talks, why is he talking about the things he's doing? I will get to the science somewhere along the way. So I will start. The first thing I want to talk about is the hacker mindset. I mean, the company was called Head Hacking for a reason. I'm a computer hacker. That's my day job. I'm one of these kind of hackers. If you haven't seen the film Sneakers, it's the best film about hacking in terms of depicting what we actually do. Hackers like to take things apart and understand how they work. And in the process of taking things apart and understanding how they work, you often find things wrong with them. And so my job is mostly to take things apart, discover the weaknesses within those things, and then write some software that will exploit those weaknesses, so that we can take control of the computer that's running that software. There's another group of people that get confused with being hackers, and they basically take the tools and the techniques that hackers develop, and then they use them to hack into computers. And these people are called script kiddies. I might look down on script kiddies as my colleagues. We might sneer at their lack of skills. Basically, they don't have the skill to take things apart and reverse engineer them themselves, but they take the fruits of our labour and then they use them. I say we might look down on them, but you can make a very healthy career as a professional script kiddie. And these are called penetration testers. In fact, there's a GCHQ qualification in penetration testing, which I held for many years. Sorry, my notes are a bit short. These days I work for Microsoft in Cheltenham. Cheltenham is the home of UK security, computer security, and I write software to detect hackers. Other people stop hackers, but me and my team, we just try and spot them and find better ways of spotting them when they get past our defences. But most of my career, I've been breaking software and encryption. To give you a little flavour of the sort of thing that would involve, I would stare at pages of code like this. In a typical application, there'll be hundreds of thousands of lines of code like this, and I would go through it looking for the obvious blunder that lets me take control of the system, or lets me bypass the security, like the obvious blunder on this page. There is a fancy cocktail in it for anyone who can tell me what the mistake is and what you can do with it. Come and have the cocktail, and then I'll try and recruit you, because clearly if you can spot the thing that's wrong with this, then
it's commented.
No, the comments are added by the disassembler.
It's not that obvious then.
Yeah, this is IDA Pro, the landmark disassembler on the market. You can actually turn on auto comments, and it will tell you what every line of code is doing. It still doesn't tell you where the blunder is. You still have to look with your eyes. If you're interested. I can't go into that.
Damn it! Can we talk later on then?
Yeah, the system uses AES encryption, which is like the gold standard of encryption on the internet, and I broke that encryption because of a mistake made here. Not because AES is bad, but because the way they're using it is bad. And it's obvious. But it's quite a technical job, is what I'm trying to get across. And we spend a lot of time doing research and development. That's kind of the nature of the job. A colleague of mine was once asked by a manager if he could watch him hack, and he said sure, and then he stared at pages of code like this for as long as it took for that person to walk away, because they don't. Everyone thinks hacking is like in the films, where you see a computer system, you have a console, you type some stuff, and then the thing breaks or opens or whatever. But in reality, it's days, weeks, months of staring at code like this just to find the errors, and then find ways of making use of it. In films, they are always script kiddies. They just happen to have the tools at hand and know which ones to use. It's a metaphor, obviously. You'll see the benefit of the metaphor. This is Minecraft, the biggest selling computer game on PC ever, and the third biggest selling computer game on any platform ever. My son plays Minecraft, which means I play Minecraft and watch videos about Minecraft and read about Minecraft. There's an interesting fact, cheaters, so Minecraft could be a multiplayer game online. Cheaters in the world of Minecraft are known as hackers. But actually they're script kiddies. They're literally taking other people's hacks and running them in order to gain some advantage. As I say, it's a metaphor. I'm sure these things will make sense later. So I was going to talk about the hacker mindset. The hacker mindset can be summed up in kind of 3 bullets, really. Learn the information that you need, and that can be read pages of code, it can be read manuals, it can be go to the pub and ask people questions, it can be steal things. There's all sorts of ways of gaining information, but you basically learn the things that you need to understand a system better than the people that put it together. Reduce the amount of effort you're expending, because obviously that can involve a lot of work. So we like to reduce effort. We like to call ourselves lazy. but in actual fact we're just efficient. Not in the, we don't refer to it as being a masculine efficiency, we are just efficient. Because we'd rather not be spending all of our effort on this, we'd rather be spending it somewhere else, like in the pub. And reevaluate your goals. Hackers like to ask questions like, why do you care? And is it really necessary? And they're not asking it just of their own work, it's especially relevant when a manager or a customer asks you to do something. You're like, well, why do you care? I mean, what is the point? So there's a way of continually reevaluating your goals. You can reduce what you're trying to do down to the useful components. You can spend your time learning about those things that are useful and minimise the amount of effort that you need to expend. If there's a takeaway from this slide, it's that you can learn the things you need without spending your life on it. And you can do that by just stopping doing the superfluous things. I was going to mention, there's something I couldn't put into a slide because it's got a rude word on it, so apologies to anyone who, not just a rude word, but terrible references. The other part of the hacker mindset is a friend of mine, Foob, who's known for Foob's Guide to Happiness, which is number 1, stop giving a fuck, and number 2, cane on. And if you apply that to your life, generally you'll be a much happier person, because at any point that you're feeling sad, someone will come to you and go, number 1, stop giving a fuck. Like, why do you care? And then cane on. But that's obviously a choice of how you implement that. So anyway, let's talk about hypnosis and suggestion. I was working for BAE Systems, a massive defence, probably Europe's biggest defence contractor, I imagine, making secure computer systems for the Ministry of Defence. And this guy, Darren Brown, came on TV. And it appeared that he could say some clever words to people and then they would do anything that he told them to do. And I thought, well, if he could make people tell them their passwords, then we've got a major problem. And like everything that we're doing is kind of pointless. So I decided I needed to know what he was doing and how it worked. So I started searching the internet, because obviously that's what you do, even though it was, I think, 2001, 2002, something like that. And I found a forum of magicians and hypnotists, and I realised that what he did was a blend of magic and hypnosis. I won't talk about the ratios between the two, but it's a blend of magic and hypnosis. And I was a child magician, so I understood magic, and by reading some books and things, I could pick up on where the magic was. But the hypnosis still eluded me. I couldn't understand how that worked, and I didn't know how well it worked and to what extent it worked. So it started a very long hobby of learning about hypnosis. Eventually, I took a stage hypnosis course, and I found out very quickly that you don't need to know how hypnosis works in order to be good at it. You know, without going into any kind of long stories, I can make myself invisible, you know, in one suggestion, but I still didn't know how it worked. And that still was a thing. I still wanted to know how it worked. Being able to do it turned out to be a very trivial thing. But how it works, like that trainer couldn't explain, and none of the books I'd read could explain. So, again, it's part of the journey. One of the things that we wanted to do, and we obviously had a lot of things we wanted to do. One of the things we wanted to be able to do was stick people's hands to tables. Darren Brown did it once in a routine. We wanted to be able to do that. And specifically, we wanted to do that without hypnotising people. You know, it's easy. If you've done a stage hypnosis course or some kind of performance course, it's easy to go through that process, do an induction, then tell them that their hand is stuck to the table. And well, for the people who take that suggestion, it will work. It's as simple as giving it. It's as easy as giving them amnesia or hallucinations. It's just a phrase, a sentence. But we wanted to be able to do that eyes open without doing an induction. You know, so you say, can I show you something? Yes, put your hand on the table. And then you go blah, 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 and then they can't pick their hand up. Like that, to us, was magic, because that was kind of outside of the frame of stage hypnosis. Now, in the search for being able to do that, James Tripp actually got there. And he released a product called Hypnosis Without Trance, which included routines along those kind of lines. And I remember talking to him about that particular product, which I didn't have. But I also talked to him about a product by David Kaloff from the 1980s called Hypnotic Techniques. And it's a recording of a weekend seminar on Neo-Ericksonian hypnotherapy. And I still recommend, you can still buy it. It used to be on cassette, but now you can buy it on CD or MP3. You can go to this website, you can buy it. I recommend it. I still recommend it. I think it's amazingly creative and diverse and quite interesting. There's all sorts of tidbits and interesting things you can pick up, even if the general theme doesn't resonate so well. But James, at the beginning of this, right at the beginning of the seminar, there's a routine that Kaloff does on his audience, where he sticks people's fingers together. And James knew the routine, but he didn't know the product. He didn't know where it came from. He'd heard it, but he'd acquired it somehow without actually knowing which product it was. So we discussed it, and as it turns out, that's what influenced my own kind of eyes open, hand stick kind of routine. So I would do a demo of how I would do that routine, but I thought, let's let David Kaloff do the demo by hearing the original, and this is what influenced early head hacking. It influenced James Tripp's Hypnosis Without Trance. So if you want to take part, you'll need something to hold, like a piece of paper or a business card or a pen or something along those lines. You don't have to take part, but if you want to, you can. So if everyone who wants to take part is ready.
If you would just take a piece of paper and hold it out in front of you and look at it. Hold it out. If your arm gets tired, just forget your arm or something. And look at the piece of paper, and I'm going to ask you to repeat silently to yourself the following sentence. I am going to drop this. And just keep saying it to yourself as you watch the paper. Over and over to yourself again. I'm going to drop this, I'm going to drop this. And if you continue to say this, I want you to try to drop it, you'll find out you can't. As you continue to watch the paper, fine. As you continue to say it, try and drop it, your fingers are stuck together, you can't drop it. Try, the more you try, the more difficult it becomes to do. Continue to try. Now stop saying it to yourself, and if you feel like completing the process, you can drop it if you want to, but you don't have to. Okay. Very nice.
So I quite like that. I mean, I'm not sure if it came through on the mic, but I particularly like at the end of the routine the sound of like 30 pieces of paper hitting the floor, where he says you can drop it if you want to, but you don't have to, and you hear. I also like how bored he sounds halfway through it. You know, you try, you can try to drop it, but you can't, you know. Like, he's rolled this out like 100 times. I mean, that is the keystone to doing a good performance. You know, the amateur does 100 different shows, the professional does one show 100 times. He's clearly done this a lot of times in order to feel that bored. As that bored, you know, while he's doing it. He actually follows up by saying it's good to get it out of the way with early on, isn't it? And it's like, yes, David, yes, it absolutely is. So it's interesting as a routine in the sense that it's really relying on the ideomotor effect. While you're imagining that your fingers are stuck, and you continue to imagine that they're stuck, your body will respond to some degree as if that's true and will cause that kind of stuckness. The moment you stop imagining it, or you try and test it by changing your mind or thinking, oh, well, I probably can drop this, then you probably could. I mean, some people, it's like Chevreul's pendulum. You know, you can hold the pendulum, you imagine it's going to move forwards and backwards in a straight line, it will start to move forwards and backwards in a straight line, even though you're not aware consciously of the movements involved in making that happen. It's your imagination that's controlling the muscles that's making that happen for you. The moment you stop imagining, Chevreul's pendulum will stop. I mean, obviously for some people, that routine would be enough to make that automatic. It would be enough for that to feel involuntary, and then the effect would probably persist. But for most people, the moment you stop imagining, that stickiness stops and it's game over. But it's an interesting effect, nonetheless. And it achieves the goal. If you're a performer and you're out at a party and you want to demonstrate that you can stick someone's hand to the table, that's a reasonable approach to do, because you're the performer, you're constantly talking, and the moment you stop talking is the end of the routine, which is roughly when you want the hand to come unstuck. So it kind of works in that kind of sense. So we'll talk a bit more about hypnosis. Anthony Jacquin got the opportunity to make a short film called Hypno Survival. A TV production company wanted to pitch the idea to TV stations, and the idea would be that Ant would spend 30 days in London with only the clothes he arrived in, with no money, and he'd have to survive for 30 days by using hypnosis to acquire the things he needed. So money, well, maybe not money, but clothes, somewhere to stay, food, entertainment, etc. He'd start out performing for his life, and he'd end up in penthouse apartments, attending red carpet events. But what he did film was a 2-day teaser, which was the pitch, which they were going to then use to take to TV companies. And in 2 days in London, he was to hypnotise a number of people, to acquire things from them, to make the film. The film's available on YouTube. I don't know if you can see the link, but the channel's called The Head Hacker, so youtube.com/users. The Head Hacker, you can find that film, it's still there. By that point, Ant asked for some help, and we spent a while trying to work out how he was going to do this. And we asked the forum of magicians and hypnotists, how would you go about this? And they had loads of ideas. Loads of them, straightforward, massively confident ideas, like how you'd talk to people, how you'd select people, you know, whether you'd do a magic trick first or you'd just go straight into I'm a hypnotist, how to spot people that might be receptive subjects, etc. And we thought, this is brilliant. And then I asked the question, who here's done this? And there was just silence. And it turned out that none of them had actually walked up to a stranger on the street and hypnotised them. And we researched the internet, and at the time, we couldn't find anyone who had gone up to strangers in public and hypnotised them outside of the context of a stage hypnosis show, because that's obviously got publicity and prestige and other things that came with it. So Anthony went off to film it, and it turned out he was a natural, and he just got on, and most of the people he tried to hypnotise got hypnotised, and the film, if you go to watch it, shows some brilliant successes. And then shortly after, we repeated the event by going to a town, I won't say which one, in Britain. We did an event called Hypno Attack, where me and Anthony and two of our friends went out and just hypnotised people on the streets and in bars to see if we could. And again, while Anthony was obviously more experienced and more confident and probably better at it, we all had success. And it proved to us that these things were possible. And not only possible, but it was a performance medium that was worthwhile. It's in the days where street magic, David Blaine, was quite a big thing. And you were like, well, if you swap out the magic for hypnosis, does that work as a performance model? And the idea was it kind of did. Anthony then went on and wrote a book called Reality is Plastic, inspired by those experiences, to teach people how to do impromptu hypnosis, as in hypnosis that's not in the therapy room, it's not on stage. We'd do things at bars and parties, sometimes quite literally in the street, although we did look out for moving traffic. And it was quite successful. He sold a lot of copies, and it led to us running weekend training courses. And on one of the very first weekend training courses, we had a mixture of people. There were some magicians, there were some non-magicians. Diane was there, and there's a fellow in the room who was an NLP life coach. And at some point, he said that he referred to the fact that he was in his life coaching or whatever coaching he was doing. He was referring to a Derren Brown routine that was centred on conversational hypnosis to explain to his audience the power of conversational hypnosis. And I burst out laughing, along with another magician. And then we immediately realised that he wasn't joking, and that he actually did this for real, believing entirely that Derren Brown was using conversational hypnosis to achieve his effect. Now, I'm not going to say which routine it was, because that'll only prompt people to come up and ask me how I thought that was done, and I don't really want to explain how I would achieve the same effect using only magical methods, and by that I mean things up my sleeves, not like the law of attraction or something. And I'm now a member of the Magic Circle, so it'd actually be I'm prohibited by my membership from explaining how I think magic is done to people who are not magicians. So please don't ask me. But ultimately, yes, that routine, I was completely convinced that conversational hypnosis played no part in how the method played out, although it was the performance piece, it was the claim that Darren was putting out there. But at that point we decided that we really needed to run courses just for magicians and courses for non-magicians, so that we didn't have to say anything again. So if we were on a course with non-magicians and someone says that, we'd say, well, you know, that might not be entirely how he's doing that, but we can't go into any details. And if it was on a course with magicians, we'd be like, exactly, let's talk about what's up his sleeves. We went on and created a course called the Manchurian Approach, Hypnotism for Magicians. And very quickly, someone from Alakazam Magic Shop came on the course. I think it might be the second course we ran. And they came back about a week later and said that they'd like to make a film, a DVD, training DVD of the course, which we knew nothing about making training DVDs. I should check what time we're at. 10 to 25 minutes remaining. Okay, we'll go a bit quicker. But we got on. The training course was 2 days. In the first day we taught people how to hypnotise, so it's how to approach people, how to introduce the idea of hypnosis, how to do some kind of tests to make sure they're following your instructions, how to do an induction, and how to get some basic phenomena. And then on that night, the Saturday night, we'd all go out to a bar that we'd arranged, and they would be let loose to hypnotise the public with the skills they'd learned in that day, and obviously under our professional supervision, to make sure nothing went wrong. But the idea was that if they go out and test it, they can then prove themselves that they actually are hypnotists and they can see it working. And we found that most people on the course would have a go, and maybe about 90% of the people would actually get some success on that Saturday night. It just put them in a much better position for day 2, where we taught proper routines and the things you could do with it, because they were convinced that A, the hypnosis worked, and B, it was possible for them to do it. Even if they hadn't stepped up, or even if they'd been unsuccessful, they'd seen their fellow classmates succeed. It's a brilliant course. It took us around Europe, teaching various different places. We went on to kind of like launch a business off the back of it called Head Hacking. We had a spangly website. So the second thing I really wanted to talk about is branding. I think branding is really important. If you're in business as a hypnotist in any capacity, or in business at all, I think branding is really important. It says a lot about you, where you come from, where you trained, how you approach this topic. If you want to go beyond being a personal brand, don't put your name in your brand. I mean, we chose Head Hacking. It gave us the ability to be a collective. It lets us grow. It lets us change what we stood for. It lets us do a lot of different things. If we'd limited ourselves in the outset, maybe we wouldn't have had those choices. And also style. Choose a style and stick with it. And by style, let that style evolve as your business evolves. And by doing so, you probably need to find a designer. And it's true that you can find a mate who wants to use Photoshop, or you can find someone that's self-taught themselves what they think is graphic design. But honestly, go and find a real designer and spend some money. It will pay you back time and time again. You'll always feel proud of what you get out of it, and they'll be much more effective at what they produce. I mean, I sort of say, like, if you talk to a designer and they're not giving you jaw-dropping ideas in your first engagement meeting, then you're probably talking to the wrong designer. You want to talk to someone who's going to blow your mind, somebody who wants to do fantastic things for you, things that no one's seen before. And so we found a designer, and then we kind of stuck with them. I shall move on. So we also ran another course called Trouble Connection, which was for non-magicians. Same first day, except with the magic references removed and all the trickery. And we did the same thing. Took people out on the street, to bars on the end of the first day, and they all practiced, and we had the same results. So on the magic course, we had magicians. They were all performers. Generally, they were all working performers. So they know how to deliver a line. They know how to appear confident when they're not. But on the non-magicians course, you've got a mishmash of people. I mean, some of them are performers, but a lot of them are hypnotherapists, and some of them people that are just interested. But it turned out they had similar successes. If you give them the confidence and you give them the tools and you drill it in such a way that they can actually just roll those lines out, and you've done enough practice during the day, then when it comes to going out in public that night, they actually roll those lines out. And the moment it works for them, or they get somewhere, things start to snowball, and they'll get very good. So day 2, we taught different routines. Obviously on the magic course, we were teaching them how to look like they were a mind reader using hypnosis, how to hide the hypnosis. With the trauma connection, it's more about making the hypnosis obvious and then using it to make people tell the truth or let you steal their belongings. Obviously for entertainment purposes only, not for any I mean, we'd never do anything bad, obviously. So this leads me on to the third thing I wanted to talk about, which is about developing your own routines. If you're a performer, I don't know how many people in this room are performers, it's very hard to tell. It's like trying to spot the good hypnotic subject. How do you know? How can you tell? But at Head Hacking, we wrote all of our own material. Now, obviously, we borrowed ideas from other places, but we worked very hard at making them our own, changing them, tweaking them, taking them out of context, maybe flipping things around. And when I see a hypnotist on TV or on YouTube and they're using our routines, like literally using our lines verbatim, I kind of have mixed emotions. I kind of feel two things at once. On the one hand, I'm flattered that someone respects our work enough to be able to roll out our lines literally how they are on the training DVD or delivered on the training course. But on the other hand, I'm sad that we failed in our mission to convince people to write their own words and their own routines. The idea was that we teach you something that works, that you can go out and practice, and then you're supposed to develop it into yourself, into your own things, and be individuals. Like in the life of Brian, we are all individuals. It's like anything can be a test of people following instructions, and anything can be an induction, and anything can be a test of whether people are taking suggestions. It doesn't have to be the steeple fingers, the handshake induction, and the arm levitation into laughter. You can make your own things up. It's like when Ant does it, obviously it looks fantastic, and Ant's been doing the same routines. He's probably still doing them now, and all the time we worked together, he was doing the same routine verbatim, because that's what a professional does. But if you're all doing those routines, especially if you're doing it publicly on film, and even if it ends up on TV, as some of these things have done, you start to look, at best you look like a clone of Anthony, and at worst you look like a poor copy. I just think that, you should really develop your own things. I think we missed somewhere along the lines in convincing people that that's what they're supposed to be doing. One year we went to Amsterdam and we made an advertising campaign for Diesel called The Magic of Christmas. You can find it on YouTube. If you Google it, it pops up. There's 3 main episodes followed by a making of called Behind the Dreams. We basically did castings, found people in Holland that were really good at taking suggestions. We made them all think they were 5-year-olds, and today was Christmas, and then they opened all the presents to find they were Diesel products. And by the 3rd episode, we made them have a massive fight, because that's obviously how Christmas ends. Which was our input. They were like, we've written this great script, and we looked at it and we were like, it's all a bit friendly. We think it needs a bit more jeopardy in there. It was voiced by John Hurt. Now, we never got to meet him, but I'm honoured that I worked on a product which John Hurt also worked on. As I said, we also work with TV magicians. We worked on another trip to Amsterdam when we were working on a TV game show. We discovered what we called permanosis. This was where you'd hypnotise someone before and they were a great subject, and then some later point, like weeks later, you're with them and you don't do an induction, you just started giving suggestions and they took those suggestions. So you're like, do you think you can pick that bottle up? No, and then they can't pick the bottle up, and then the bottle is turning into a fairy, now you can't see me, etc. All without any formal induction. And we call that permanosis. Once you've been hypnotised, you're kind of permanently suggestible. Around the same time, we discovered ninja hypnosis. One person's hypnotised someone and they're in the middle of a routine, and I just walk up and start giving suggestions, and they don't even know I'm a hypnotist, but because I'm giving suggestions with the confidence and the sound of a hypnotist, they would take them, and I just steal their subject. I got lazy, I couldn't be bothered doing the induction part of it, all the health and safety, and this is what I want you to do, and this is what I need to think about and follow these instructions, and they went all through all of that, and I just turned up and look to see who's doing amnesia or hallucinations, then go and steal those subjects. I mean, it's much easier. I mean, these, obviously, what was happening wasn't what we thought was happening, which I'll come to as we go on, but these were things that we were discovering along the way. At some point we gave away a load of material. It was like the basic training we gave away on a YouTube channel called How to Hypnotise. We did a course in Las Vegas with Igor Lehovsky, and he filmed the whole thing, paid for it all, and he said, you can have all the material and do whatever you want with it. He said, you can literally give it away for free if you want. So we did. I edited it, branded it up, stuck some logos on it, made it into 8 little episodes to teach the basics of impromptu hypnosis. And one of those videos did really, really well. So obviously I'm a social media expert. For those who can't see it, it says 1.2 million, just in case you can't see that part of the slide. We also, it wasn't all entertainment, no, we ran a conference, as Adam says, Change Phenomena, you have the DVD, it started in 2010, we managed to get Jürgen Rasmussen over, talking about provocative hypnosis, and we contacted academics, or we tried to, and they largely ignored us. One that replied saying, I will not be speaking at your conference, gave us the opportunity to reply and say, we're really struggling to access the science. If you're not going to come and speak, what else can you suggest? And he suggested 2 books, and these were the 2 books: Oxford Handbook of Hypnosis and the Handbook of Clinical Hypnosis, which we went away and read. We were of the opinion at the time, or had been led to believe, that the science of hypnosis was really poor, or there wasn't much science of hypnosis. So the idea of reading, we were going to read these books, and we thought there might be a product in this to like poke fun at the lack of science in the world of hypnosis, and we were wrong. They kind of blew our minds, and I took the Oxford Handbook and went away and read that, and Anne took the Clinical Hypnosis and went away and read that. And I'll come back to that story and what happened next in a moment, but basically Professor Irving Kirsch became a bit of a hero of ours. He'd spent his entire academic career trying to understand hypnosis and suggestion, and largely that was through taking the expected statements or the supposed facts about hypnosis and challenging whether those things were true. Such as, what did inductions do? How did suggestions work? Were suggestibility scales suitable and effective? And was there a hypnotic state? And if so, what was it? I mean, they're brilliant questions, and he had equally fantastic answers. So we got in touch with him and asked him if he'd speak at the following year's Change Phenomena in 2011, and he said yes. And as it turns out, we had issues putting out the video for this year's Change Phenomena. So 2011 is the famous missing year, but I happen to have the video. So I have looked at it and watched it a number of times. The fourth thing I wanted to talk to you about today is knowledge. So as performers, I don't think it really matters if you know how hypnosis works. I mean, true, it can make you a better performer. You know, if you're going to only do the things that are necessary, or within your patter, focus on the things that are necessary and add in the superfluous things that you want to add in, but not feel you need to do the superfluous things that are just there because of the way you were taught. So knowing about hypnosis, I think, would actually make you better. And it can stop you doing the things that make you less effective. But if you're a hypnotherapist, I think you absolutely need to know how hypnosis works. I think you need to understand what's really happening in order to be effective. And if you're a professional hypnotherapist, I think being effective should be up there. It should be kind of important to you in your career. That if you're going to take money off people to improve, to change them for the better, or whatever those things are, then I think you should know something about how it works. So as I say, I've watched this video a number of times, and I've pulled together some quotes from Professor Kirsch. I will say, his opening gambit when he came on stage, and he was the first speaker of the day, was, I've got some good news and some bad news. The bad news is, most of the things you do don't work. The good news is some of them do. And then he went on to explain. One of the early things he said was that if you're going to use hypnosis in your practice, you need to know what works, and just as well you need to know what doesn't work, and that should be based on scientific evidence. That's an opinion, that's Kirsch's opinion, whether or not it should be based on scientific evidence. I'm sure in this room we would all agree with that. Outside of this room, there's probably hypnotherapists, maybe in a lecture about anecdotes, or maybe sat in the bar doing the law of attraction, or whatever it happens to be, who think this is an opinion. And it's true, but when science enters their life in other areas, like fire safety, for example, or the brakes in your car, they're quite happy to take science at face value and just accept that that's the way the world is. It's just when it comes to their profession, they seem to think they know better. Well, I agree with this opinion. I think your knowledge should be based on scientific evidence, because it's there. We know from... So he said a number of things that aren't true. Age regression is not true. It doesn't work because of the way memory works. Ideomotor signalling for unconscious truths does not work because the finger can raise for any number of reasons. And he said the third thing that does not work is neuro-linguistic programming. I don't have time to go into it right now because we're already at the 10-minute mark, so I'm going to carry on through. But I've got quotes here that would upset you if you happen to be a user of neuro-linguistic programming. He said hypnosis is not a state, and it's socially constructed cultural phenomena. And it's true. Hypnotherapists themselves typically don't do much research because they don't know how to. But how would they get out of their frame of hypnosis being a state in order to examine whether or not it was? This is where you need academics to be able to ask difficult questions. For 80% of the population, it doesn't matter whether you need an induction. Now, for the other 20%, he strongly implied that it wasn't clinically relevant anyway, even if it might be statistically relevant. And he did say hypnosis is mostly suggestion, but suggestion is very powerful. So I buy his books. His books are brilliant. I've read some old books. Clark Hull taught Milton Erickson and Changed the Face of Psychological Research, a worthy book to read. I also love this book. I don't know if Zoltan's in the room or not, but I bought this book many years ago, and it taught me statistics in a very clear. As someone who loves maths but never learned statistics, this book taught me statistics. And then when I went on to learn cryptography, the stuff in this book helped me understand cryptography. If you haven't got this book and you read academic papers, I suggest you get this book by Zoltan. It's amazing. We went on to make a product called Ripped Apart, based on the automatic imagination model. How long have I got? I reckon I've got about 8 minutes.
Yeah, 8 minutes.
So reading, the side effect of reading all the science was that we had our own mini sort of theoretical breakthrough, and you can't call it science. We didn't have the funding, or we didn't have a university body to provide the ethical oversight, so we weren't, we couldn't ethically do the experiments we needed to do. So we haven't been able to rigorously test our ideas, but we informally tested them in performance because we hypnotised a lot of people, or we did at the time, and it's basically combining the hacker mindset with some basic things from the science. And I'll quickly so some of those things are, we live in an imagined present. Like the present that we experience is kind of imagined because information enters our brain. It takes time for it to reach the centres of awareness, and that awareness obviously exists. We don't live in the past, as some other professors suggested. We live in an imagined present. And if that present is imagined, then you can do things with that imagination. Good hypnotic subjects have no better powers of imagination than the general public. They're not better at imagining. That's not what's making them good subjects. So we should all be okay at imagining or taking suggestions from that perspective, theoretically. Third, most people can experience the ideomotor effect, like the Chevreul's pendulum. So you imagine something is true and your body responds to some degree as if that is the case. Cold control theory suggests that it's higher order thoughts, thoughts about your cognition, thoughts about your experience, that are that mediate how well suggestions are taken, and that if those higher order thoughts questioning the experience weren't there, then things would become more automatic or feel involuntary. If you weren't aware that you were in charge of those things, if you didn't have thoughts saying, I'm imagining this, then those things would start to feel involuntary, the effects you were experiencing. So we thought, well, what if you could use the ideomotor effect to get the effect you desire, so imagine your hand stuck to the table, and then use that idiomotor effect on the awareness that you're imagining. Use that on the higher order thoughts. So, and also imagine that you're not aware that you're imagining this, and that any reminders of that you're imagining this will simply vanish or not be relevant for the next couple of minutes. And then any other reminders of reality will kind of fade and vanish along the way. And we did that as an iterative process usually, where we would check in and ask them, how well is that working, and what does that, how did that feel? And each time they reported some other reminder, go through the same process, but ask them to imagine that that reminder won't appear either. And that essentially got people to take suggestions. We found that more people took suggestions, and then more people took bigger suggestions. We didn't have to do any hypnosis. It also led to the trance killer suggestion, which was, it's just your imagination, you can stop imagining that anytime you like, can't you? Which kind of undid it. If what we were suggesting was true, this was the opposite. This would bring that awareness that you're imagining back to the fore. And so you can have someone spend 20 minutes hypnotising someone deeper and deeper, do all the phenomena, get them stuck, they couldn't move out of their chair, they had amnesia, they couldn't speak. And I could just walk up and just say, it's just your imagination, you can stop imagining that anytime you like, can't you? And they'd open their eyes and go, of course I can, and just get up. And it would kill the hypnosis session. But for us, it killed the notion of trance itself. Trance was a suggestion, and suggestions were based in the imagination in such a way that they felt automatic. I did a talk on it at Change Salon in 2012, it's on the DVD. Have a look if you're interested, it could kill an hour. One final quote from Professor Kirsch, or two rather, quoting Martin Orne. He says, if you're not professionally qualified to treat somebody for a thing without hypnosis, then you're not professionally qualified to treat them with hypnosis. And I would suggest that it's very important to be professionally qualified from a counselling and ethics perspective. If your powers and your skills and your techniques are so powerful that you can change someone for the better, then they are also sufficiently powerful to change them for the worse. And if you haven't had proper training, how do you know which one you're doing? So I suggest you need training from a government-sanctioned body such as the NHS or a chartered institute in order to separate out what you need to know in terms of counselling and ethics. And I suggest, as hypnotherapists who are professionals, that that's what you should be doing. So in summary, these are the 5 things I talked about. Does anyone have any questions before I get thrown off stage?
Can you go back 2 slides?
Yes, sir. So that's on the DVD that's in the bag.
Okay.
That's 2012, so that is that year. Where I talk about what we knew about hypnosis. There's a demo in there as well. Any other questions? Then I obviously did my job either exceedingly well or possibly not so well. But thank you very much. I'm great.
Thank you very much, Kev Sheldrake.